Welcome back to the program. That certainly was the last part of the Cursed Gemma series there on the unexploited, or should we say improperly exploited, mineral wealth in this particular country. Right now though, let's get back to our discussion on all matters constitutional, and tonight we're focusing on Parliament's agenda. We started off earlier on this evening with a focus on devolution and a couple of other matters. Right now they're going to plough forward with a focus on Parliament's agenda. What exactly is awaiting MPs? In studio with me I have the legislator for Imenti Central, Gitobi Manya, thank you very much for coming in, and also the legislator for Rangwe.
Thank you.
Martin Ogindo, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, aside from the draft constitution itself, there are quite a few other issues you also have to deal with in the course of this particular session. Key among them, the budget. That is your baby by virtue of being the chairman of Parliament's Budget Committee. Seems that there's a risk perhaps that this might be pushed off the agenda?
Thank you, Rama, but I think I want to start from this point. There's a risk of this being pushed off the agenda, and indeed I've seen an attempt to do that. I was very disappointed with the President yesterday when he was highlighting the bills that were passed last year, and he conspicuously missed out on the Fiscal Management Act. And this is one of the substantial bills that we passed last year.
Because this is the first time we're actually going to have a full session where Parliament
is the first
really
time,
involved
yes,
in the budget process.
We test ran it with the last budget, and this is the first time we want to really put it into real test. And we want to see compliance to it. And even then, it comes with certain obligations on the Minister for Finance to explain to Kenyans how the budget has been executed. So as we resume, we expect reports to show the budget execution, how targets have been met, how expenditures have been incurred. And we look forward to this because in a way it will help us to deal with the corruptions that are inherent in most of the ministries, because by putting them to account, we are opening up all those ministries.
Although to their credit, we've seen the PS Finance publicize in the papers, put ads in the newspapers, asking people's comments, announcing that the budget process is on now. And you know, under the new standing orders, March 21. By March 21, the Minister for Finance must issue the policy statement of the budget. And I think this request to the public to participate is in the right direction. But apart from just requesting, they also need to be telling us what they did with the money that was allocated to them during the last financial year. So I think as my brother here is saying, even as we go to implement in total the provisions of the Fiscal Management Act that was passed last year, and even as the Finance Ministry asks for public contribution, we need also the same breath to be telling us how the money was spent that was allocated to various ministries last year. It is not lost to a lot of us as MPs that even the stimulus package money has not yet been released. And we keep getting conflicting stories. The Minister for example, Minister for Roads saying that money has been lying idle, when the truth of the matter is that no such money has been released whatsoever. And no signatures have been requested. But we are moving, I think, rather slowly though, in the right direction. But a lot remains to be done. It's a new, it's a reform item that was introduced only last year. And I think the government seems to have accepted it. So the challenge is on now Parliament, because we are required by law to participate. That's why Mwashimiwa's committee is so critical, so important. But there are setbacks. For example, if you remember the era that the finance minister talked about,
the 10 billion shilling era
met, and a resolution of the House was passed that there be forensic audit. Up to now, it has not been done. And this is a responsibility for Parliament because it's a parliamentary resolution by the committee. But as I speak to you now, they haven't asked, they haven't sent any adverts to the public. The contracts have not been issued, and we cannot really blame now the Treasury there, because it is our responsibility. We are the ones who ordered and audited the House, and we need to follow up.
on that
Fortunately,
particular
we do
matter?
have an implementation committee as one of the package reforms. So from there, it now comes to the implementation committee. I think there is need for us also in Parliament to recognize that we are required to do a lot more than just speaking out in Parliament and passing laws. Now that we have given ourselves a responsibility to participate in the budget making process, to follow up, for example, when the House does pass
that's an interesting point you're raising, because for the typical Kenyan out there, perhaps, they'll be looking at this and saying, okay, so you want all this power, but what are you doing with it? What are the returns that we're getting from it? Are we going to be seeing more show trials, quote unquote, in Parliament where an MP stands up and issues a motion of confidence perhaps against a minister of sorts, especially given we've got a maize scandal and an education scandal to deal with? Is that likely to happen this time around?
It's important. Don't forget that speaking out is part of the MP's job. But apart from that, we also represent people's interests. So we speak out, but there is need also to speak out and follow up. And that is why when we were reforming the standing orders, and this is also an agenda item, one of the items on Agenda 4, a reform of the parliamentary standing orders, that we must provide the House with the means to follow up on the decisions that are taken. So apart from holding the executive to account, we also have a responsibility in terms of ensuring that the budget, the money that is been allocated, is not only spent and spent well, but is spent in accordance with the items that the vote that we passed. That's why it is important, for example, when the budget committee or the finance committee passes a resolution requiring audit, forensic audit of the budget, then it should be followed up within a set time, so that within 6 months
we actually have results.
We have something to show. So all of us have a responsibility to ensure that the Agenda 4 reforms and the constitution making is only one item. With the media, for example, we are passing the regulations to muzzle the media, whereas under the Agenda 4 reforms, passage of the Freedom of Information Act is one of the critical priority reforms that we were required to do, but we didn't hear the President talk about it yesterday. Yet, under the agreement that he and the Prime Minister signed, if you look at point number 2, is their commitment to ensuring a Freedom of Information law is passed.
Let me just jump in briefly there, because we've covered quite a few things. There's budget, there's drafts, you've got stuff to deal with, massive infrastructure spending. The President said is coming for House approval for expenditure on the Kenya-Uganda Railway, the Lamu Port, and so on and so forth. The draft constitution obviously is at the top of that to-do list for Parliament. How do you arrange the rest in order of priority? Let's start with you, Honourable.
I think the time for constitution is now. But we must be very careful not to lose sight of much more important things, because we don't want a constitution just for the sake of it. We want to obey our laws and continue to making them better laws. So already we have laws that regulate other things, like the issue of the railways, the issue of maize. Now, we see a lot of inadequacies in our law. One, the way the maize is being traded here in Kenya is totally unregulated for the benefit of the common man. And that requires a lot of streamlining. Two, the way privatization is taking place in Kenya, despite the law being there, is totally to the detriment of this economy. In fact, I see an attempt or a design that aims at cannibalizing the assets of this country. So we must not lose sight in pursuit of the new constitution as other things go unnoticed. So we will have to have two eyes, one at the other issues that have to go on, and one on the constitution. But on our to-do list, constitution would be first.